Greetings from Jabalpur. So today we will discuss the EQUATOR guidelines. These guidelines are currently the backbone of transparent and standardized clinical research reporting. These are evidence-based reporting standards, and these are often demanded by most of the reputed journals whenever we submit our manuscripts. Why guidelines matter? Sometimes, despite good intentions and a very good manuscript, the poor reporting can obscure results. And many of the clinical trials, they lack clarity or reproducibility, and because of that, the manuscripts gets rejected. Selective reporting and bias that reduces scientific reliability. Therefore, these guidelines are made by the EQUATOR Foundation. These guidelines, having CONSORT and SPIRIT, these ensure that what's done is clearly and fully reported. They also improve the peer review and meta-analysis qualities. Summary: these guidelines helps to standardize reporting and enhance the credibility of our submissions. The EQUATOR Network stands for enhancing the quality and transparency of health research. The website address is shown. Basically, it was established in 2006 as a global initiative, as an umbrella, and it has a repository of multiple reporting guidelines across various study types. It is an international initiative which helps to improve the reliability and value of the published literature. It's a consortium. The EQUATOR guidelines are for many research types, many manuscripts types that include randomized trials. The CONSORT guideline is for randomized trials, for observational studies for which STROBE is there, for systematic reviews for which PRISMA is there, and likewise there are several others. Also, it has a guideline for protocols whenever we submit a protocol before starting our manuscript. So that can be reported in the form of SPIRIT guideline. It has separate guidelines for animal studies, economic evaluations, etc. Moreover, whenever we are submitting some special thing like artificial intelligence or for a randomized trial, if it's a special type of randomized trial like a cluster trial, so you have a extension for that. So in total, there are 692 reporting guidelines under the EQUATOR, and they help us to write our manuscripts in a very clear and better way. When we are submitting our guidelines, and suppose we do not know which guidelines to choose from, we can go and click the search bar. Here we can select under the drop-down menu from the study type, our study. We can also go and select the drop-down menu from the clinical area in which our subject can be chosen. For example, neurosurgery. We can also choose the section of report, for example, imaging. So you can have a separate guidelines, let us say functional MRI for brain, and thus it will help us to select the proper guidelines and a manuscript can be made better. The CONSORT stands for Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials. It is for randomized controlled trials. It's having a 25 items checklist. It was first published in 1996 and was later modified in 2010 and then further modified in 2025. The recent guidelines have been published simultaneously in 5 journals, including PMJ, Lancet, PLOS, etc. It also has a flow diagram, which I'll be showing. And as I said, it is used for randomized controlled trials. It includes every point in the randomized trial, whatever needs to be included. For example, what needs to be included in the title, abstract, methods, results, discussion, funding, etc. So this is checklist looks. So on the left hand side, it has a section or topic. Then we have a checklist item description. For example, in the title, it has to be mentioned that it is a randomized trial. In the abstract, it has to be a structured summary of the trial design, methods, results, and conclusion. And on the right hand side, we need to report at which page of the manuscript that point has been included. So this is for everything, right from title and abstract to the trial registration number, protocol, data sharing, funding, introduction, methods. Methodology, as we all know, is very important in any trial. Then results, discussion, conflicts of interest, etc. The consort guideline also includes a flow diagram in which we have to report how many patients were enrolled and assessed for eligibility, how many patients were excluded because of not meeting of inclusion criteria, decline to participate and other reasons, how many patients were randomized and then allocated to the two arms or if there are multiple arms, then how many patients were followed up and how many patients were lost to follow up, and then ultimately how many patients were analyzed. So you can see that the trial has become more transparent with this trial. The consort guidelines thus can be summarized into these points. There are sections for title, abstract, introduction, methods. We have already discussed this. So this is an example how the manuscript will look like before the consort. Like it can be written, we randomly assign patients to surgery or medical management. Here we can see there is no randomization method described, unclear sample size, and no flow diagram. After the consort, the sentence can be rewritten as patients were randomized using a computer generated sequence with block size 4. Consort flowchart illustrates participant inclusion and is equal to 60 and follow up at 6 months. Before consort, there is no mention of registration or blinding, while after consort, there will be that trial registered with the number, outcome assessors blinded, results analyzed on intention to treat basis. Manuscript has improved after using the consort. The SPIRIT stands for Standard Protocol Items, Recommendations for Interventional Trials. So this is for reporting the protocol when we are submitting the initial design of the manuscript. We report it as a protocol, and that has to be reported under the SPIRIT guideline. This was first established in 2013. It has a 33 items checklist with sections of administrative, which includes title, trial registration, introduction, which also includes the same thing as of consort, background, rational objectives, methods, including participants, interventions, and outcomes, and informed consent, including confidentiality, plans for dissemination, and others. The SPIRIT also has a flow diagram in which we have to mention when the enrollment will be happening, when the randomization, etc., will be happening. So it thus ensures that the study progresses in a timely fashion. The SPIRIT and CONSORT were published simultaneously in 2025 for the first time to improve harmonization between the two guidelines. So initially, they were separate, but now the two executive groups have been merged into one to unify them and harmonize their checklist content. They have updated items on open science, risk, harms, etc. And the scope of these guidelines, especially the SPIRIT guidelines, has been narrowed down to RCTs only. As I said, there are sometimes special situation in a randomized trial, like cluster trials, non-inferiority equivalence trials, pragmatic trials, herbal interventions. So for that, consort extensions are there. For systematic reviews, there is a PRISMA guideline. The full form is Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. So it's a 27 item checklist along with a flow diagram. It was first published in 2009 and then updated in 2020. And it ensures clarity, reliability, and reduced bias in the systematic reviews. So like consort, it also has a checklist in which we have on the left hand side different points for each of the part of the manuscript and then a checklist item. And then on the right hand side of the page, we have to report where that point is located in the manuscript. It also has a flow diagram in which we have to mention that how manuscripts which were included in the systematic reviews were identified and included. For example, in the first box, we have to write that records were identified from which databases. whether it's from PubMed, Google Scholar, Scopus, etc., any registries. The records removed before screening, how the duplicates records removed, n is equal to what. Similarly, the others excluded were because of which reasons. Then how many records were screened and then again excluded. Then reports sought for retrieval, reports not retrieved, reports assessed for eligibility, and reports excluded because of what reasons. And then ultimately, how many studies were included for deriving the results in that systematic review. So thus it makes the whole manuscript of systematic review very transparent to the reader. So this is a decision tree from the EQUATOR Network showing that how you can reach upon the your suitable guideline. It has simple yes and no questions for multiple questions. For example, was the research on humans? You have to select yes and no. Similarly, if you select yes, then you will be asked that whether it's a quantitative data or a qualitative data. So likewise, there will be many questions, and you will reach to your specific guidelines. For example, PRISMA, MOOS, Tripod is for artificial intelligence, CONSORT, as I said, for RCTs, STROBE for observational studies. For diagnostic tests, you have START guideline. So this decision tree helps us to reach our target guideline. But sometimes if we still do not want to use that decision tree, we can definitely go on to that search box and select our guideline. Extensions are for each guideline and for special groups, I have already told. Now, how to use these guidelines? Firstly, we need to go to the EQUATOR website. These guidelines are free to download. And then we have to search and download them. We need to use these guidelines during our study design and manuscript writing. And then in the end, we have to submit that checklist along with the manuscript. There are some common pitfalls, and because of these, our manuscripts get rejected by the journals as the authors do not adhere to these guidelines even when the substance of the manuscript is good. So do not treat these guidelines as optional, treat these as mandatory. Using incomplete checklists is not a good thing. Misreporting, randomization, or blinding is a practically no-no situation. And again, we should not ignore the flow diagrams. They makes the whole manuscript very transparent. So to summarize, the guidelines ensure complete and transparent reporting of the manuscripts. They ensure reliability towards the reporting. They avoid missing of things whenever we are writing something. And in toto, they ensure quality, transparency, and reproducibility for the reader. Dr. Doug Altman, who was a statistician from Oxford, he said that if you are going to do research on patients, then do it well and report it honestly. Thank you.